Okie dokie. Hello, hello, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's recap for Division EUB of the the Reddit Rookie League. We've had some really great games this week. Yes, we are live. We've had some really good games this week, and we've had everyone. We've had all 10 teams signing up. Now, unfortunately, there were two teams that weren't in the that were potentially signing up previously that didn't accept their tickets and weren't signed up. So we've got a couple of teams that were accepted as part of the reserves list, and we will just have a quick look at them before we get into the results of this week. So firstly, the first one to look at is the Junior Stouts here, and we'll just pop into them. They are a dwarf team, a wonderful wide bunch of people. For Stout we lust, in Stout we trust, and they play at the Fermented Keg. And it's a pretty good, solid dwarf lineup here. We've got two Troll Slayers, we've got two Blitzers, two Runners, and a bunch of Longbeards with the 3 team rerolls. So we've not got the Death Roller, which is probably the best thing to do, to be honest, because that thing is going off the pitch as soon as the first drive has finished. But, of course, it can really deal a lot of damage. The other team that we have is Jubba's Gumps, which is going to be an absolute bloody nightmare for me to say every single time. But this is a human team, and we've got a pretty good standard setup for this. So we've got a thrower, we've got 4 blitzers scattered throughout. We've got an ogre, and I think we've just got the 1 catcher. Yeah, and the rest are linemen, as well as 3 team rerolls, and they are playing at Green Bowl, Alabama. Love it. I love it. And what was there? Like a box of chocolates. There we go. So like I say, we had a pretty good week this week. Everyone's already had all of their games played, and that's ahead of the Wednesday deadline. So that's why we're doing it today on a Sunday. Also, I should say thank you very much, Dr. Gabble, for following today. Really do appreciate it. So we will move on to the matches this week. So this was the schedule that we had, and we'll jump into the very first one, which is No Longer a Wooden Puppet versus the Junior Stouts. Now for this match, the Junior Stouts won the toss and chose to attack, so they received the ball. Not too long after the start of the match, the Dwarf Runner picked up the ball, but then the Elves came charging through their defence and managed to take him down on turn 1. Then there was this hero dwarf that just came in and ended up recovering the ball from a tackle zone. I believe it was a blitzer, so they have agility 3, but that's still on a 4-up within a tackle zone. He then dodged out, which is a 3-up, and then did 2 GFIs, which is 2 2-ups. So a lot of rolling, but he managed to do all of that, if I remember correctly, without a single reroll. And then, unfortunately, the Elves ended up stunning him. So the ball then bounced wildly around, and then a War Dancer just picked it up and ran away with it, as War Dancers want to do. Yes, he was a pro dwarf. It was amazing to see. When I was watching it live, I was thinking, no, you can't be doing that. Okay, you've got it now. Just stay there. Oh my god, he was fantastic. I can't remember which player it was. I will need to look back at that to figure it out. Keep your eye on them, yeah, definitely. But of course, when that War Dancer just went running out of the way, the Elves just chose to stall, which is the right thing to do. You'd want to stall in that situation. So of course the Dwarfs did what they could and probably should have done in that situation, which is just cause as much pain as possible, blocking and fouling as much as they could. Now, within this fouling, there was a lot of focus on one single elf lineman, but I did notice that there was a War Dancer not too far away, which I think could have been a better target for the fouling, because that would have been a lot more of a loss for the Woodies if anything happened to him. And then on turn 5, the War Dancer did like a little wiggle dance, just running around with its 8 movement before scoring a touchdown. When the new drive came along, the Woody started with 3 fewer players due to 2 KOs and a badly hurt. But there was a heavy wall of dwarfs on the attack that really paid off when the ball just landed right next to the line of scrimmage, I think just 1 space behind. The Woodies, in response, did the wonderful elf wall of the 1x2 elf screen. The dwarves ended up pushing forwards quite a bit, but on turn 7 of the first half, they left the runner, I think it was, 9 spaces away from the touchline, which means that even with his 6 movement and 2 GFIs, he'd need an extra movement. So just that little bit further up and he would have made it if he'd have ended his turn just 1 space forward, which was a real shame because he'd worked hard to get there, and it would have been great to see the equalise at that point. Now, the only way that he would have been able to get there would have been through some creative chain pushing, but I think that the elves noticed this and just legged it, just ran away. And because of this, the dwarves understandably fouled an elf that was on the floor. But I think they used the wrong player. They were fouling a lineman, and they used a Troll Slayer to do this, who then rolled double 4s, and that got him sent off, and it just KO'd the lineman. So it would have been... It's not the best trade-off there, unfortunately. The second half started with the Wood Elf drive with 10 dwarfs versus 8 woodies. The dwarfs put up a big, beautiful wall, but unfortunately left their runners exposed next to the sidelines. War Dancer jumps over the wall, positions himself behind a runner, and then another War Dancer runs in and pushes the runner into the crowd, who luckily survived this situation. At the same time, the Woodies just held back their catcher and drew the dwarfs forwards, which the Wood Elves then took advantage of and just ran straight through. A blitzer then made this valiant run round the elves to try and take down the War Dancer who now had the ball on a 1-die blitz. But for some reason, he rolled on the 1-die a defender stumbles, which would have just been a push, wouldn't have taken him down, because it was a blitzer rather than a long bid. But he re-rolled it, I think, trying to get that defender down, which is a 1 in 6 chance. That's only a 16.6% chance of getting that. And because of the greed, was met with a skull and fell over. At that point, the elves just ran right towards the dwarf end zone, and there wasn't a dwarf in sight. So the next few turns just turned into, in the dwarf half, the elves playing this nice game of catch amongst just friends, just having a wonderful time, whilst in the elf half, we just had a bunch of dwarfs slamming their beer mugs onto fallen elves, and really unfortunately only managed to get stuns out of this. But the dwarf player, Crag the Hack, did create this wonderful image for us, which I will just bring up now. Yes, so this encapsulates everything that happened on the elf side of the pitch. It was just beer mugs slamming into exposed elves that were stuck on the floor, and it was glorious to see, but unfortunately it just didn't pay off. Well, this is the thing. Following on from that, it was the Woodies ended up scoring on their turn 16, bringing the match to 2-0, which just left time for the dwarfs to punch elves on the line. There was a rock thrown by an angry dwarf fan, but it just stunned an elf. And the very, very last block of the game got through. It broke armour, and that elf fell down to the floor dead, becoming a good elf. It was great to see. There was some great stuff, and I think that it was a lot of wood elves doing wood elf things. You just expect them to do stuff like this. Before watching this match, I sort of made a brief prediction and thought the wood elves have probably got it just through sheer elven bullshit, and that's quite what happened. Lot of possession by the Wood Elves, and that's what you'd expect. Not much on that side. Only 9 Wood Elf blocks thrown. They just avoided as much as possible. It would have been nice to probably have probably seen more blocks because of more blitzing just to take down the dwarfs, but the dwarfs were very concentrated, and any elf that got isolated would have just been completely obliterated. Yes, the elf that died on No Longer a Wooden Puppet was Pinocchio's stomach. So that just has this horrifying image of all of the limbs and then a missing centre. Kind of like a Rayman sort of thing, just take out the ball in the middle, and that's what you've got. Only 28 blocks on the Junior Stout side, but those elves just they ran away so much. No injuries, KOs, or anything for the Junior Stouts. It was all on the Wood Elf side. And then that MVP went to the War Dancer that had 6 SPP already. So he is leveled up and leveled up nicely. Not loads of SPP to go around the two teams, but it's at least a start for both of you. General stats here, I mean, some of this is looking quite low, especially for the catches. 54%, you expect that to be a lot higher for Wood Elves, especially as they weren't in tackle zones, so you'd expect that to be a lot higher. So you kind of got screwed there on some free SPP going around. Looking at the Junior Stouts, just pretty good all round. Even the dodging is at 66%, which is what you'd expect from the AG3 guys that you've got on your team. And then looking at the block dice, I mean, the Junior Stouts had it nicely on the top side, whereas the No Longer a Wooden Puppet just didn't throw many blocks, but they very heavily into this both down area. I don't think there was any jump up. Oh, oh, I see. Sorry, I missed the context of that because I've seen. Yeah, okay, let's leave that there. But yeah, so that match ended at 2-0 to No Longer a Wooden Puppet. The next match was Jotunheim's Wolves versus Rattus Lissavirus. And this one started off with the Jotunheim Wolves winning the toss and choosing to defend, so we're kicking to Rattus Lissavirus. The ball fell close to the line of scrimmage, and the Skaven team got off to a good start, immediately injuring a Norse lineman. However, there was an early re-roll in that first turn that meant that when the Rat Ogre later on did a 3-dice block, and the result was a both down, a skull, and then another both down, he couldn't re-roll that. And at that point, there was a turnover before the Rats could even pick up the ball. The Jotunheim Wolves then pushed forwards and ended up picking up the ball with an Ulfwerener, whose AG2 means that's a 50-50 shot to pick that up. Surrounded by AG3, but picked up with the Ulfwerener, which was just amazing. But he got it first try. Didn't even need a reroll. With that, the Jotunheim Wolves just pushed forwards, and at times were making some really risky blitzes with the Ulfwerener, who was carrying the ball. Risky because even though he's got Strength 4, he doesn't have the block skill, whereas everyone else does, and so could have ended up in some real trouble if a Frenzy brought pushes and then skulls. That could have ended poorly, but it didn't. Eventually, the Ulfwerener ended up making it to the end zone, scoring a touchdown on turn 6. The Rats then only had 2 turns to try to score in the first half, and did some amazing placement and managed some risky blocking with an accurate pass, and ended up equalising on the last turn of the first half. So we were at 1-1 at that point. Jotunheim's Wolves then received in the second half and made a good push forwards. The Rats put in a lot of effort to try and take down the ball carrier and managed to get them down a couple of times. However, the Rats found it quite difficult to recover the ball at these times, and the Norse just kept picking up the ball whenever it went down onto the floor. And with a continuing push forwards, Jotunheim's Wolves scored, and the score went to 2-1 to the Norse. Rattus Lysivirus then only had 2 turns to score and made a valiant attempt to do so, which I'd actually like to show here because I think that they did a really good job at trying to get this sorted. So let's bring that up now. So yeah, this is turn 15. The ball's just gone over to the Rats, and they do a nice push forwards with the with their gutter runner here. Take down this guy off to the side, just shove him across, and then bring down some more guys over on this side. So getting a nice amount of scoring threats ready for the thrower to pick up the ball. Nice, just picks it up nicely, but then starts to pull back into the field, which I understand because you've got the you've got some Norsemen there who could try to take him down. But I wonder whether it was worth a risk to try and keep that guy a little bit more forwards. And then a couple of these rats get pulled back, whereas one of them potentially might have served quite well to come forwards and cover one of these sides. Also, there was a potential block that could have been thrown on that Norseman that's in the middle that could have helped free up another rat, or could have just meant there's less Norse running around trying to screw up your day. The Norse just completely surround this gutter runner off to the side here, and he's just got no chance of doing this. We've then got a blitz on this Storm Vermin over here, which I think could have been against the Gutter Runner instead. I think he might have been able to make it nicely. Just take down that scoring threat. So we've got the scoring threat covered over here. The Rat Ogre then runs in to try and free up the Storm Vermin and the Gutter Runner slightly, and gets a nice KO there, just clears him out the way. It is the last turn, so there's not much that's going to be going on here. And then here we come. So the thrower comes down, GFIs again, and goes to pass to the Storm Vermin. I'm not sure what the idea was here, but I think it might have been to try and avoid any of the what's it called? Like any interceptions for the Gutter Runner, because the next thing that the only thing that you could have done after that, I think, would have been to try to hand off to the Gutter Runner, which would have been a 4-up anyway. So I think the pass to the Gutter Runner might have been the best choice, but regardless, the dice would have worked against you. Would have worked against that anyway, and sadly they weren't able to equalise. But I really like that. I really like the attempt to try and equalise there, not just writing the match off at that point, but still trying to get those touchdowns in. Really good to see, really good. If we go to the statistics, so yeah, the Jotunheim's Wolves had a lot of the ball possession through just over double the blocks that Rattus Lysivirus managed to throw, and got a good number of KOs within that. There was a lot of people going down across both sides, and that's to be expected from Armour 7 teams, or broadly Armour 7 teams. I think a fairly decent spread of SPP on each side. No level ups, but there's a lot of people who are ready to level up, which is really nice to see. Dice rolls, Armour, that's crazy, failing 20% of armour rolls. That's a lot of stuns throughout the match. Pickups 50-50. It doesn't look amazing, but the game went quite well for Jotunheim's Wolves, and I think that came down a lot of the times to really good positioning. If we look over at Rattus Lysivirus, armour 44%, which is crazy. Fairly good dodging. All of this is looking pretty okay, to be honest. If we look at the block dice were definitely in the favour of the Norse team here. Lots of things that you'd like to see. And Rattleslisavirus, lots of skulls, 15 skulls. That's horrible to see. Really horrible to see. And only 13 at the end that you actually want to see. So yeah, that was a really good. that really went against them, but I think a lot of this came down to how well Jotunheim's Wolves managed to position and choosing the right blocks at the right time. I think both teams have got a real chance to do really well in this league, so I think these are both ones to really keep watch of. Next, we'll move on to the Handsome Runners, the Necromantic team, versus the Scarab City Rattlers. So at this, the Handsome Runners won the toss and chose to attack, so they received the ball. Bear with me, just a quick drink. Now, the kickoff event was a riot, which meant that both teams lost a turn right at the start. The Scarab City Rattlers set up their defence deep into their own half, and so the Handsome Runners pushed forwards to bring the fight to them. There was a failed dodge with a white that caused a stun and a turnover with the ball still on the ground. This was quite a risky move because the ball wasn't really under control at that point, but with the Khemri team so far back, the ball really wasn't in that much danger. The Scarab City Rattlers then pushed forwards to try and put some pressure on the Handsome Runners, and a Necro Ghoul then managed to pick up the ball, and a few turns later a zombie ended up KOing one of the Tomb Guardians with a foul. The Khemri team then ended up splitting in half, and the Ghoul went charging right through the centre with some basic but it was only lightly defended, so that meant that the Scarab City Rattlers were able to just move after him and hassle him a little bit. The Ghoul did manage to escape, but after a 1 on a GFI made him fall over, he then got knocked out 2 spaces from the end zone. Tomb Guardian then knocked over the only Necro player that was anywhere near the ball, which was a werewolf, and ended up stunning him while the rest of the players brawled around in the midfield. By the end of that first half, a Thro-Ra had managed to pick up the ball, and the Necromantic team just had no chance of scoring at all. So the first half ended with no score on the board. In the second half, there was a touchback at the start that gave the ball to a Thro-Ra, meaning that they didn't even need to bother fumbling around with the ball to try and pick it up. The Necro team then threw bodies at the Tomb Guardians to try to hold them up, but they were just outstrengthed and swatted aside by those Tomb Guardians. The Necro team then tried to continue to mount a defence, putting lots of zombies in base contact with the Tomb Guardians, but they just kept getting pushed aside fairly easily. What this did have the effect of, though, was only allowing the Khemri team to advance slightly forwards. Necro team then managed to pull a Ghoul back as well as a werewolf to act as safeties, whilst the flesh golems, the white, and the zombies worked to try and slow down the immediate threat. But the Khemri team were just proving surprisingly mobile and were regularly repositioning themselves whilst using players to just hold down some of the Necro team's bigger threats. It wasn't enough, because the ball carrier did end up getting knocked over by a werewolf, who picked up the ball, started to make his way into the Scarab City Rattlers half, and was then knocked down by Tomb Guardian. The ball was then quickly recovered by Thro-Ra, and a channel was just created through the centre of the Handsome Runners line. Last-ditch attempt by Ghoul to try and take down the Thro-Ra failed when, once again, for a Ghoul, ended up failing a GFI to carry out a blitz this time. And this meant that the Scarab City Runners could just easily walk the Thro-Ra in without, but ended up having to do that with a couple of GFIs, and that was scoring the winning touchdown, bringing the game to 1-0 at the very end. Really good match there. I really enjoyed watching it. And as we can see, a similar number of blocks thrown on each side, with the Handsome Runners managing to inflict a lot of KOs as well as an injury, whereas the Scarab City Rattlers got a KO and a couple of injuries. There's the Handsome Runners didn't get too much in terms of SPP, whereas the Scarab City Rattlers got a bit more of a spread, which is quite nice to see. But no level ups. Again, quite middling in terms of success rates here. Not great pickup rates. Armor rolls not going particularly well. Injury rolls not being great. Dodges only 50-50, which is not what you want to see with this. I can't remember if some of those might have been zombies with their AG2. Going for it, as I said, these GFIs just really screwed them. And regeneration only working half the time, which actually is what you expect when it's on a 4-up. Scarab City Rattlers, similarly, fairly low, trying to dodge a few times, which is difficult when you've got AG2. The wake-ups after KO just were not friendly at all. Yeah, so it's not great rolling overall. Block dice were looking pretty good overall for the Handsome Runners in the end that you'd like to see, as well as these both downs if they were on whites was a really good thing to see. The Scarab City Rattlers, however, it's not looking as good over. Actually, 27 to 24, so pretty good, pretty all right actually. But there's a lot of pushes there, a lot of them. So it's not too bad in terms of the block dice. I think just that creation of a channel later on in the match was a real winner for the Scarab City Rattlers, as well as bad luck for the Ghouls when doing GFIs. Next we'll move on to Jubba's Gumps versus the Buffed Who. So our new human team, Jubba's Gumps, against Chaos Dwarfs. This was an interesting one. Started off with a blizzard. So that meant that all GFIs would have been on a 3-up rather than 2-up, making any GFIs a bit riskier. Thankfully, the Bull Centaurs have Sure Feet, which gives them rerolls on failed GFIs. But it's still a lot riskier than you'd probably like with the GFIs. And as Ard has said here, that blizzard lasted the entire game. So Jubba's Gumps ended up winning the toss and chose to defend, so were kicking to the Buffed Hooves. The first half of that match was a really solid performance from both teams. Jubba's Gumps worked really hard to hold up Buffed Hooves as much as possible. Some might look at that match and think that the Ogre on the human team was underutilised because it didn't move for quite some time. But I really liked that because it meant that it was just there in the middle of the pitch as this big roadblock and made it really difficult for the Buffed Hooves to find a weak spot. What it also meant was that the Ogre could easily react if the Chorfs did break through and provided Bonehead rolled well. And that too, he stayed there, so you kind of forgot him. You kind of forget about them when they're not doing a bunch. By turn 3, Bull Centaur ended up getting hold of the ball, and they continued to try and probe the human defence, trying to find a way forwards. When the ball carrier started to make its way through, that's when Jubba activated his Ogre and charged him straight in, taking out the ball carrier. Over the next few turns, Jubba's Gumps set up a solid wall, but a Hobgoblin and a Bull Centaur managed to break through. Jubba didn't seem to be having any of this though, and took down the Hobgoblin, leading to a big tussle happening at the sideline that sent a Bull Centaur and a Hobgoblin flying into the crowd. By the end of that half, the humans managed to get a hold of the ball and stop the Chorf advance, ending in 0-0. So the second half was still anyone's to play for. The ball then went to Jubba's Gumps at the start of the second half. Jubba's Gumps pushed up the right-hand side, but 2 Bull Centaurs came charging into the humans' side of the field. Despite the pressure put on Jubba's Gumps, they managed to switch sides and screen off the Chorfs a little bit and started to make a break up the left side. The Chaos Dwarfs then waddled their way trying to cut off the human advance, but eventually a really well placed. I really like this. It was a 2-die uphill block that ended up just pushing a Bull Centaur out of the way, and then a dodge out of a tackle zone meant that the Gumps were able to make it to the end zone and brought the match to 1-0. The Buffed Hooves then only had 3 turns left and needed to be really aggressive. I was saying 2-die uphill. So yeah, 2-die uphill, half-die. It's 2 red dice, ultimately. Yeah, that's cool. So the Buffed Hooves at this point needed to be really aggressive to try to equalise here with 3 turns left. And that's exactly what they did. Bull Centaur picked up the ball, and the Chorfs just kept the humans out of the way. And there was some really great placement from the Chorfs at that point, and the humans just could not hope to get close to the ball carrier, at which point the Bull Centaur just ran into the end zone, getting the equaliser and ending that match at a 1-1 tie. This was a really good match to watch. I was really impressed with both players here. There was some great positioning and great use of the different positions on the team. Like they both seem to really have a sense of understanding of what each player could do. So that was really nice to see. And I think it comes through in the stats a little bit. Each side having 37% of the possession, similar number of blocks thrown. Buffed Hooves inflicting slightly more in terms of KOs and injuries, but overall it was pretty similar throughout. And I wasn't sure where that was going to go, especially as it got to be equalised at the end of the first half. Because it was so so equal throughout, neither team really got that much in terms of SPP, which is a bit of a shame because these teams, I think, get a little bit more SPP on them, level them up, and they're going to be ones to be watchful of. Dice rolls, I mean, it went pretty well overall. These KO rolls were not great, pickup rolls not amazing, but when you've got like dodging at 71%, Bonehead only not at 90%. That's really not bad. Bit low again on the Buffed Hooves side, but I think a lot of this match came down to a lot of the skill of the players. I mean, look at this for Jubba's Gumps. 21 skulls they threw, more than the pushes. Like this lower end is just horrible. 33 on the bad end of the scale against. It's at 27 on the other end of the scale with only 20 pushes. Like that's gonna be those 21 skulls are gonna be horrible to deal with because you know that they might have been rolled on. The skulls were with the POW, of course. Yep, skulls always with something that you want. Buffed Hooves. We've got 32 pushes. We've got 29. On the good end, 19 on the not so good end. So really good in terms of rolling on the block dice here for the Chaos Dwarf teams. But yeah, a lot of it came down to positioning, and that was really good to see. One of my favourite things in this match actually was at the end of the first half. With the human side knowing that they didn't have a chance to score because it was turn 8, they decided to foul with the ball carrier, which I don't think I've ever seen, but it was great to see. I really liked that. Okay, so moving on to the last match is Kitchen Hell versus the Witch Elf Waifus. In this match, Kitchen Hell won the toss and chose to defend, kicking to the Witch Elf Waifus. The weather for this day was very sunny, so this meant that the passing game would be affected by that. Every pass would have had an extra. You have to roll one higher, which could damage the throwing game a little bit. There was a pitch invasion at the very start that did no favours for the Chaos defence. because it knocked over 5 of their players, whilst the Witch Elf waifus only had 1 player fall over. The Witch Elf then picked up the ball, and the Elves just ran down either side of the pitch. The Chaos team did what they could to try and tie up the Elves, but it just wasn't enough. That's alright. So yeah, the Witch Elf then handed off the ball to another player, who then lobbed the ball to an Elf in the end zone, and that took the Witch Elf waifus up to 1-0 only 3 turns in, which is a bit of a risky strategy, really, because what you've now got is 14 turns for the Chaos team to try to equalise and then potentially win. So that's a really risky one. You're now going to be spending so much time on the defence. The Chaos team then took control of the ball quite quickly, but the Witch Elf waifus charged in and took down the ball carrier. However, the Kitchen Hell ended up getting back the ball, consolidated a strong defence, and pushed the ball forwards with a well-fortified cage. Kitchen Hell then got the ball within 7 squares of the end zone, and there were some weaknesses in the Witch Elf waifu's defence, but they just weren't quite taken advantage of, giving the Dark Elves time to form an even stronger defence, and the half ended with Chaos not scoring. The second half, there was a riot, which brought the number of turns for the Chaos team to score down to 7. After a bad Chaos Warrior block caused a turnover, the Witch Elf waifus then ran up the side and picked up the ball, threatening to go to 2-0 up. The ball was then quickly stripped away, and Chaos took control of the ball again, forming another cage to push through the Dark Elf defence. However, the Dark Elves then set up a wide wall to stop the advance, and the ball was only moving a square forward here or there, if at all. By turn 14, the ball did finally manage to pass the centre line, and it seemed as though Chaos might have been able to charge through to the end zone. But then the Witch Elf waifus managed to tie up the ball carrier until the Chaos team made an amazing play, which I'm going to show. Not that one. There we go. So this is it here. So start off with chucking a few blocks. A bit of a risky one, that, because of course you're potentially pushing a guy towards the ball carrier. But we're clearing out a nice bit of room here. So punch down there. And using up the reroll to push this elf out of the way here. Next, we bring this guy down, push the Chaos Warrior across, so he can get a nice 2-die block onto the Witch Elf, which results in a push, which gives the Chaos team an opportunity to start marking a couple of people up. And then the Beastman comes running out, hands off to the Chaos Warrior, who then makes a break for it. And if I remember correctly, he then does GFI there, which, risky without that reroll, but it may have been worth it. But then the Witch Elf waifus do something that I was surprised to see what happened here. So we knock down the Chaos Warrior and starts to run up here, doing a double GFI, I think that was, to get to the Chaos Warrior. Before then, the Witch Elf comes on, falls over, but we've still got a reroll. GFI, GFI, to hold down the Chaos Warrior. And he's out there, isolated, all alone. Trip over an elf, always a good thing to see. And what does he do? Tries to get through, but he's not got any rerolls left. 1-die block and falls over. And I feel really bad for for the Kitchen Hell there, because that was a fantastic attempt to try to equalise. and you do not expect two lots of double GFIing to just stop you at that point. It's just you don't expect it. And had he had that reroll, he might have been able to make it through. There's a few other things he could have done, like attempted to do at that point, such as dodging out and stuff like that. I think there was an opportunity to dodge out and then do a double GFI to get to the end there, but there was no way he was getting out of that situation without rolling a good few dice. So he did the best that he could, but unfortunately the dice went against him. Looking at the statistics, not much going around. Of course, one thing that I forgot to mention, how could I forget to mention it? The Dark Elves, on the very last turn, as if what we saw there wasn't bad enough, kicked a goat in the face, and that beastman went down, and he's never getting back up. And Witch Elf Waifus got themselves a kill. Same number of blocks on either side, and it's not too dissimilar in terms of injuries, but that injury and that kill really matter. Only an MVP going to Kitchen Hell, whereas my waifu gets a level up by doing a pass and then getting MVP. So that will be really nice for T-Man when he goes on. Looking at the dice rolls, it went pretty okay for Kitchen Hell, and it went really well for the Witch Elf Waifus. Like, that's a really nice lot of dice rolled there. Looking at the block dice, I mean, that's crazy. 24 skulls. That is not nice to see. Not many of these were resulting in skulls, but it's still horrible to see so many skulls there. Even these both downs, you don't want to see that on this team. You want just this, and you're only rolling 22 at this end. I think it may have been... Yeah, only 2 armor breaks for the Chaos side. It's unpleasant playing as rookie Chaos at times, but they move on to a really nice team. They develop really well. Witch Elf Waifus on their block dice, it's all what you want to see. 30 on the good end of the scale. Even some of these both downs would have been nice with the 4 blitzers in there, and only 28 pushes with only 8 skulls. It was a day for the elves, that, and they did pretty damn well. So that takes us through all of the matches themselves. What we'll look at now is the current state of the leaderboard, which I've pulled off of Goblin Spy for now, because all of the matches haven't validated. So as you can see here, we've got No Longer a Wooden Puppet at the very top, having a 2 touchdown difference, followed by the wins from the Jotunheim Wolves, Witch Elf Waifus, and the Scarab City Rattlers, Buffed Hooves and Jubba's Gumps sitting there nicely in the middle, and at the bottom of the table we've got Rattus Lysivirus, Kitchen Hell, Handsome Runners, and Junior Stouts. Of course, it's only week 1, and we've still got 8 weeks ahead of us, so that is going to change. If we now then come back to the game and have a quick look at what's going on next week. Before we do that, actually, we did have a chat last week about the results for these. So we didn't know about this match, so we didn't make a prediction there. When it came to the Jotunheim's Wolves versus Rattus Lysivirus, Chris was the only one who managed to get that result correct. When it came to Handsome Runners and against Scarab City Rattlers, I think everyone went for Khemri, so everyone did well there. And when it came to Kitchen Hell versus the Witch Elf Waifus, everyone bar my friend Charlie pegged the Witch Elf Waifus for that match. So looking at this week, we've got the Handsome Runners versus the Junior Stouts. So if we have a quick look at those, won't show up on here yet because the games haven't been validated. But we've got the Handsome Runners up against the Junior Stouts. So that will be the Necromantic team versus the Dwarf team. If I remember correctly, both of those teams are going to be coming into this with their full complement of players. So that remains to be seen. Now, I think that potentially the mobility of the Handsome Runners with their werewolf, with their ghoul, might give them that edge over the Junior Stouts. Plus, the Armour 9 on the Junior Stouts might not come into play when the Wolf gets involved, if the Wolf wants to get involved. That's the thing. So that remains to be seen what will happen there. Based upon mobility alone, I'm thinking that the Handsome Runners might have this, but if the Junior Stouts manage to get some of them bogged down and manages to mount a really strong defence, then it could go to them. But I'm going to hazard a guess on the Handsome Runners. Next, we've got Jubba's Gumps versus the Jotunheim Wolves. And the Jotunheim Wolves, I think, might be missing a player from the next match. I can't remember exactly. Whereas Jubba's Gumps will be going in with the full complement. Looking at this... missing a lineman, that's it. Looking at this, the missing lineman isn't too much worry. Either from the winnings, get a new lineman, or get the loner journeyman. Either of those is fine. I'm struggling with this one because I think that the amount of block, I think that the frenzying might pay off, and those two big guys may end up tying each other down a bit. I'm going to give this as an edge to the Jotunheim's Wolves. I think that they might just manage to do this, largely around the skill set of each team and the fact that neither team got completely crippled in the previous one. Plus, the Jotunheim's Wolves have that strength advantage with those couple of Ulfwereners, as well as having Dauntless on the runner, which I think Jotunheim's Wolves has. I'll just double check whether they've got the runner. Yes, they do. So in a bind, that might work against the Ogre. So I'm giving that one to the Jotunheim's Wolves. Kitchen Hell versus No Longer a Wooden Puppet. This is horrible. 2 weeks in a row being put up against elves, and this time you are going up against the worst of those elves, because those woodies are just going to be running around like nutters. I think that this is going to the Wood Elves. I think that the lack of skills on Kitchen Hell is really going to screw them. They don't have any tackle to take down the War Dancer, and No Longer a Wooden Puppet have a leveled up War Dancer out of 2. It's going to be a tough match for the Chaos team, and I think that the focus there should be trying to get as much SPP as they can to try and get that team leveled up for later matches. It's going to be a rough one. I think it's going to go to the Woodies. Oh god, if that War Dancer gets a stat up, that thing needs to be stamped on big time. Next up, we've got the Witch Elf Waifus versus Rattus Lissavirus. On this one could have the potential to go either way. I think that, yeah, the Witch Elf Waifus have got the leveled up Witch Elf, which isn't great to see. But I think that Rattus Lissavirus might be okay. They've only got 2 block and they against the 4 block from the other side, but those Gutter Runners can cause a lot of havoc. Again, I wish that there were more gutter runners. I wish there were at least 3 gutter runners on that team, and I doubt that the winnings from the previous match would have been enough to get a 3rd gutter runner. The Witch Elf waifus have the agility advantage. The Rattus Lyssavirus have, I think overall it kind of evens out in terms of strength advantage. And at the moment, Rattus Lyssavirus don't quite have the skills to counter the Witch Elves, the Dark Elf team, and also have the lower armor value. I think that on this front, that it's going to be going to the Witch Elf waifus. I think it's going to be a hard-fought win, but I think it's going to go to the Witch Elf waifus on this one. Moving on to the Buffed Hooves versus Scarab City Rattlers, we've got Chorfs versus Khemri, and this, I think that it's going to go to the Chorfs. I want to go to the Khemri, but I think that the Chorfs are going to do enough work to, like, if they do enough work to tie down those Tomb Guardians, take them out of the picture, and focus on using their Bull Centaurs to really work hard against the Khemri team, then I think they might have it. Again, I think it's going to be a tough matchup. We've got 2 teams that could really work hard against each other to do this, and yeah, the mobility is the key to this. I liked the way that Buffed Hooves used their Bull Centaurs and their Hobgoblins, and I think they'll do a really good job there with that. I think they can utilise them to really harass anyone on the Scarab City Rattlers, because I think I watched Phage, I think I watched that match in your division, and if I remember correctly, the Chorf side just got completely tied down on one side of the pitch, which meant that they didn't seem to be too concerned with trying to run around and take down the runner who was just having a nice gentle stroll to the end zone. But I think, having seen Buffed Hooves play, I think that they will be more willing to go after that ball carrier. And so I think that just on that, I think that Buffed Hooves have got it, because I think they can utilise their Bull Centaurs well. This is all recorded now, so of course we'll go into a week's time and I will be proven completely wrong. So I think that about wraps it up. We've got a good week ahead. Really interested to see how everything goes, how everything plays out. What you're wanting, Ard, is you want to see rain, because even though that means your Bull Centaurs aren't going to be able to pick up the ball, your Hobgoblins can, and none of his guys will be able to. So we'll see how that goes. I think that's about it for anything. As you can see, we've got a nice death counter ticking along at the bottom there, and it will be nice to see that keep ticking up. We've got 2 deaths in week 1. Are we going to see even more deaths in week 2? That remains to be seen. So, thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. Thank you for joining me as I ramble away for about an hour. And good luck on your matches this week. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.